Part 2. In August 1514, Mary married Louis by proxy, and a month later she travelled to Dover with Henry and Catherine to begin her new life in France. It was here where Mary allegedly received a promise from her brother that if she married Louis as he desired, she would be able to choose her next husband if she outlived her first. Mary left for France, accompanied and escorted by Henry's best friend, Charles Brandon, Duke of Suffolk, the man she was in love with. The wedding of Mary and Louis took place in October, and the bride wearing cloth of gold. However, when Louis decided to dismiss most of Mary's English retinue, their marriage hit a snag. The move left Mary feeling vulnerable at the French court, and she wrote to Henry to complain, with Louis later explaining that he believed her ladies were keeping him from his new wife. The engagement and marriage had been conducted quickly and for good reason. Louis was considerably older than his bride and had also failed to produce a son, so his throne was set to be inherited by his son-in-law and nearest male relative, Francis of Angoulême. Louis died on the 1st of January 1515, less than 3 months into his marriage. Despite the fact that his death was not unexpected, many people blamed Mary, claiming that the king had spent the last months of his life trying to please his young wife. Following her husband's death, Mary went into mourning and seclusion for 40 days, while France waited to see if she was pregnant with Louis's child, which would have impacted the succession. Mary was not pregnant, and Francis succeeded the throne as Francis I. Henry dispatched Charles Brandon to France again to bring his sister home. She was still young and highly desirable bride, and Henry wanted to ensure that they kept the wealth that Mary had acquired during her brief reign as queen. Henry reportedly warned Charles not to marry his sister while they were in France, which Henry promised that he would not. However, Mary was at risk of becoming a diplomatic pawn again. As Henry's sister, he had an interest in marrying her off again for his own advantage, despite the promise that he had supposedly made. Yet, as the Dowager Queen of France, Francis also had a vested interest in Mary's marriage prospects because he could possibly have benefited from her remarriage. Upset, Mary refused to marry again unless she could choose the man she wanted, Charles. In March 1515, the couple were married in secret in Paris, with only 10 people in attendance. This included King Francis, who had been persuaded to support the marriage by Charles, and who likely supported the couple because it prevented Henry from gaining a diplomatic advantage by marrying Mary off again. Henry was humiliated by Mary and Charles's secret wedding. What was worse, Henry had committed treason by marrying the king's sister without express permission. Mary was safe because she was a royal princess and Henry's favourite sister, but Charles was in danger of being executed. The newlyweds attempted to minimise the fallout by writing letters to Henry apologising for their deception. Mary took responsibility for the marriage, most likely to protect Charles from her brother's anger, with Charles claiming he had no choice but to marry Mary because she was so distraught. The couple benefited from the fact that they also had the support of Cardinal Wolsey, who intervened with Henry on their behalf, and even edited Mary's letters to her brother before she sent them. The fact that she stayed in France after the wedding may have given Henry a chance to cool off. Although Henry was furious, he knew Brandon was ultimately loyal to him and was no threat to him, and his anger was more likely the result that his right to make the decision was taken from him. Mary and Charles managed to buy the king's forgiveness by paying a fine of £24,000, as well as Mary's dowry and the jewels and golden plate given to her by Louis. In May 1515, the couple returned to England and married officially at Greenwich. Henry and Catherine attended the ceremony, which was a significant and public gesture of the king's forgiveness. Although Mary spent little time at court, perhaps because she gave birth to four children between 1516 and 1523, the relationship between Mary, Charles and Henry improved over time, and Henry's desire to marry Anne Boleyn caused a rift between the two siblings. Mary died in June 1533, 1 month after Anne Boleyn's coronation. Mary spent the rest of her life in Scotland, where she died in 1514. Their lives were certainly complicated, and both women took big risks with Margaret, in particular frequently derided as reckless and ineffective for her decisions. Yet she managed to survive the fractious Scottish court, while Mary escaped the fury of their brother, who grew increasingly cruel during his reign, and regained his favour. The sisters made the decisions that were best for them, at a time when royal women had little say over their lives, and that is truly remarkable.